Scott, thanks for sharing part of your morning with us here. I want to get into crude, which after spiking to 60 in reaction to news out of the G20 over the weekend, sold off. It's back to down, well, within pennies of the $56 level in the overnight session. Talk to us about what's weighing on the price of crude. I mean, we saw an agreement from OPEC this week on production cuts through the end of the year, but yet crude continues to come off.
So, Ben, I think that really just goes to show you how important the weakening data is across the globe, which leads itself to slowing demand. I think that is obviously what is overriding the extension of the cuts, and that is major concern across the board here. And I think that even though we got the big spike up, you know, from the low 50s to 60 based on you know, the expected expansion cuts, which they're now adhering to. Now that that's behind us, the focus is squarely on economics, and economics are really, really bad right now across the globe.
So I imagine you're talking about some of the PMI numbers that we've been seeing, some of the disappointing numbers as well.
Absolutely.
But Scott, we continue to see inventory draws. Last week we saw one 12 million. In the overnight session, the API actually, they reported a draw of 5 million. Last week, 7 million. But when you look at it, I actually noticed that the 5-year inventories, at least relative to the 5-year average, we're still above that level. So I'd imagine that actually kind of, well, at the very least, kind of softens the tone a little bit for the bulls. I mean, yes, we're seeing draws, but we remain above the 5-year average still.
No doubt about it. And you also have to consider the fact that we're at record production levels as well. So you know, so those draws and the draw that was just reported by API, not that large of one, a little bit larger than expected. So I think you have to take that all into consideration here. But you know, when you look across the globe and you look at all of the global growth forecasts and the new demand projections, it's pretty dismal. It really is. And even with, you know, some of the good positive rhetoric out of the G20 related to tariffs, you know, that people may have thought that, okay, that's going to ease up on some of the worries here in the U.S. and some of the worries in China. The bottom line is the fundamental analysis now of what is happening across the globe is far outweighing the extension of the supply cuts.
So Scott, I'm not sure if you saw, but Nick Cunningham of oilprice.com recently wrote an article where he mentioned the business activity index in Texas fell to down 0.6 in the second quarter, down from a positive reading of 10.8 in the first quarter of this year, a negative reading being a sign of contraction. He said while oil and gas production continued to rise in the second quarter, it did so at a slower pace than in past months. Is this proof that the slide we saw earlier this year in oil prices led to the pullback in spending and drilling and, well, the pullback that many expected we'd begin to see?
So I didn't see that article, but it certainly makes sense. I mean, and that's not an isolated report of what we're seeing on these contraction numbers. Like you mentioned, Ben, you look at PMI here, and for the first time now, we're starting to see numbers in contraction space below 50. That is not a good thing here. And listen, I think that the world is oversupplied. U.S. production continues to ramp up. Shale production, you know, we know that we're at an all-time high. It was just about a year ago that we were approaching 10 million barrels a day. Now we're 12 million barrels a day. You know,
I gotta go on with Ben in a minute here.
Yeah.
So you look at all of that production and say, wow, what is that next impetus to the upside? And to me, unless there is some geopolitical unrest, something that happens in the Mideast, maybe, God forbid, another pipeline, you know, that gets shut down, I don't see how we get above 60. I don't see how this last rally that we saw over the last couple weeks continues. In fact, I would go out on a limb here and say we've got a better chance of hitting 50 than we do 60 in West Texas.